Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out to our Parent Summit Series session number 1. This is our first information session for the 2017-18 school year, and we're delighted once again to be able to bring to you the expertise from within our own Connect staff. There's nothing that is more common between you and us as student success. It's why we were all here. It's hopefully why you chose to bring your children to this school, was because you felt that they would have a great opportunity to be successful. And it's why we are all here, because we truly believe that we can help to support their success within the learning program and the environment of Connect Charter School. So this evening, we're joined by 4 very, very accomplished individuals who are part of our staff, who are going to share with you their expertise, their understanding of what can contribute to that level of success. Ms. Abby Saadeh is our Inclusive Practices Coordinator at Connect. Her role is to make sure that we are making all of the accommodations for students that are necessary to support their learning. She looks after all of the special needs within the school. Her role is starting to spill over a little bit into counseling even. She's working a lot, supporting teachers in their planning. There's a lot of tasks that Abby takes on, all of it in support of student success. Dr. Chris Hooper, relatively new to our staff, as our new assistant principal coming from Westmount Charter School. I've known Chris for about 14, 15 years now, and have come to have so much deep respect for his ability as an educator, and most recently as a graduate of the Doctor of Education program at the University of Calgary. Chris completed his doctoral research in resilience. What is it that creates resilient children and adolescents? How can we as educators and as parents help to nurture that and foster it, and how does that contribute to our students being more successful? And really, when you think about it, our vision of it as a school is to prepare our students as extraordinary citizens. And that's not just all about academics. In fact, it's far more than academics. It's a lot more about citizenship, about community building, and about being resilient. And so Chris is going to talk a little bit more about that. We also have Mr. Jared McKenzie. Jared is a portfolio leader with the humanities team here at Connect Charter School, as well as a full-time grade 8 humanities teacher. Has been with the staff now here for 6 years? 6th year now. And Jared is currently completing his master's program at the University of Lethbridge, focusing on neuroscience and executive functioning, or inclusive education. Thank you. But your research is focusing more on executive functioning. That is the frontal cortex, the piece of our brain that makes us decide whether something is right or wrong. Should I do this? Should I do this? And it allows us to think, oh, if I do this, this might happen. And if I do this, this might happen. We've probably had experiences with kids where they don't often go through that process. I'm thinking it's like, let's see what, and before you know it, that's what happens, right? So Jared has developed, is actually conducting some research here within the school, is going to talk about executive functioning, and is joined by Chris Wilding. Chris is a University of Lethbridge pre-service teacher, currently finishing his practicum in Jared's class. We're working really hard to see if we can find a position for Chris when he's finished in 3 weeks. But he's done an amazing job as a pre-service teacher, and he's going to share some of his thoughts and experiences as well. So, enough of that. I'm just going to turn it over to Abby first.
So yes, my name is Abby Saadeh. I'm the Inclusive Practices Coach here at Connect Charter. The focus of my discussion today is mainly going to be around relationships and bridging those relationships between family and with our school. So most of my experience here is about based on a professional development session that I went through with Dr. Gordon Neufeld and Dr. Gabor Mate after 40 years of their research. And I felt, you know, after being a teacher for 15 years now, it's really hard to be impressed by a lot of the PD sessions out there. And when I walked out of this one, I felt like I needed to share it with everybody that I knew. So it was really quite life-changing. So I felt like I really needed to share it with everybody here, or anybody who listened to me, really. So Dr. Neufeld talks about something called optimal functioning. And what optimal functioning is around emotional health. And he has 3 indicators that he talks about are the 3 indicators of emotional health in an adult or a child. And the first one that he talks about is called playfulness. So this is something that I really didn't expect to see. Playfulness, how does that mean that you're functioning optimally emotionally? Well, it became very clear after really thinking about it. And playfulness is not necessarily playing. As adults, we don't necessarily play, but we can become playful. One of the greatest examples I saw was when you talk about a small child and you see that they're not feeling well. The first sign that we know that they're starting to feel well is we say they're beginning to play. And another is that, through mammals, you see them out, and when they're in the absence of threat, they begin to become playful. So it's one of those things that all mammals and humans feel when they're at optimal functioning. So that would be like at the top. The next level would be restfulness. Now, if you could imagine, there's about 800 adults sitting in a room watching this, watching and listening to this discussion, and we all kind of went, restfulness, right? It's something that none of us really quite feel because we're so spent, we're so busy all the time. And so he was saying, well, how are you going to be playful if you don't feel rested? So that was the next level. And then the third indicator that he spoke about was actually the one that I'm going to spend most of my time talking about today. And it was about feeling fullness, or other words, emotion, and feeling emotion. And so we have recognized as educators that it's almost become a little bit of an epidemic, that children are having difficulty recognizing emotions, recognizing that they're feeling these emotions, and some have even got to the point where they've stopped feeling some of these emotions, and that would be like an emotional sort of hardening. And so, I've done this with my own son who's 6 years old. He'll go out into the cul-de-sac, come back, I got into a fight with Ryan, and I say, okay, well, push yourself through, pick yourself up. Let's, you're strong. And what I did was I stopped him from feeling and describing what he was feeling, when really I should have stopped and coached him through that process, because it's sort of like a self-cleaning oven. Our body is made perfectly to take care of us, and what happens is that cycle is not met if we don't feel that emotion. So the feeling of sadness is required in order to build that resiliency, to fill that cycle, or to feel any kind of emotion is part of that cycle. So he was talking about the word and the etymology of the word sad. And if you look up the etymology of the word sad, and if you really do some digging, you'll see that it means to be freed. And so that was really striking to me. Like, wow, to be freed. It doesn't mean that it's, anything but to go through that cycle and to feel free of that sadness so that you can move on. Somebody got it right back then, and we've somehow lost that along the way. So, rather than asking them to push through those stresses, we should be embracing and allowing them to feel them and telling them, well, this is, that's really frustrating. That's really, that's really annoying that happened. If you're really tired, oh, well, maybe you're just feeling like you need rest. And being able to describe what those feelings are for them is what's essential for us to be doing. And so what they were talking about is that sometimes they've seen that this loss and this push through and this perseverance that we think that we're doing to help our children is actually causing more harm, and it can produce anxiety and depression and some things that we'd never thought that we would have ever wanted to do because we thought we were trying to make them stronger, right? And so this cleaning up, sort of self-cleaning oven, I call it, this process is called the adaptive process. And so this is our body's way of cleaning itself, and the outcome of that is that resiliency. So our challenge here is to begin to help our children to get their feelings back. Emotion is meant to take care of us. It is meant to be part of what we do. is meant to be part of what your body does to heal itself. So how do we do this? Now, the way that they described how we do this is actually through building really strong, healthy relationships, safe places. And the way that they describe it is what they call attachments. So your attachment, and our number one attachment, and the goal for our attachment should really be a child's parents. And then all the other attachments really should filter into the other parts of their lives. Now, back in the day, we had those attachments through like aunts and uncles. There was bigger communities of people that surrounded our children. There were, grandparents. There was these, so many people. And it didn't only help to help our children, it helped our mental health because all of us were in it together. So what's happened now is that we really just don't have a lot of that anymore. And it's become harder because we're on our own in forming these attachments and that support for our kids. So as adults, what we can do is we can become sort of like secondary attachments, a place we can be people that, that bridge that feeling, because there's nothing more hard on an attachment than the separation of that attachment. And school is one of the most harshest separations for an attachment for a child. So what we want to do is make sure that they have that safe, loving, caring environment that they can go to, and we build some of those secondary attachments for them. Now, somebody asked me, how do you know who your attachment is? And, the way that it was described to me was that it might be that person that the moment you see them, you just start to fall apart in tears. It might be that person who, it doesn't only come out in tears, it just often comes out in tears. It could also be somebody who the moment you see, you just get angry because you can let it out safely. It could be in children, you might see it as somebody who's acting out, right? So there's so many ways that it comes out. Dr. Neufeld actually talked about, before he realized what was going on, that he would go on tours and do all these sessions, and what he would do is he would come to his hotel room at night, and he'd call his wife, and the moment he called his wife, he immediately had to run to the bathroom. So that was his body's way of responding to that comfort that he felt when he spoke with his wife. So it can come out in a lot of different ways, but you'll see that it's a consistent way that it comes out with those attachments in your life. So we gain attachments through these healthy relationships with people in our environment, and our probability of survival actually increases with our healthy attachments, because attachments have actually replaced survival. So this is what we need as people. This is how we've progressed. What this means for our children is that we have to build, restore, and nurture this as much as possible. This is a really hard thing to do because they can be so mean and so difficult sometimes, and we have to, it's almost like they're pushing us. They want to see how far they can go, and they'll tell us, if you love cooking, they'll tell you they hate your cooking, right? They will be as mean as they can sometimes in finding that comfort in you at home. And before I move further, there's somebody asked about whether they can find these attachments through friendships. And so this one, it's important that we foster really healthy relationships in their friendships, but it's also really important that they don't find their attachments through their peer relationships. And the reason for this is that they're not reliable. Somebody who loves them one week, they'll be enemies the next week. So we really don't want our children to be seeking these attachments from peer groups, because they can very often, especially in the junior high years, get steered off course. We have to be really careful about that peer attachment. That's, like I said, it's not to say that we don't foster those healthy relationships amongst their peers, but the main attachment should be an adult, because an adult will be looking out for them. And so, knowing how important attachment is and an attachment is in a child's life, we also need to realize that when stress grows in children, rather than decreasing that attachment, we have to increase it. So, I've been at fault for this one a lot as well. I keep telling stories of my 6-year-old, but I send him to his room all the time when I'm really frustrated and he's really frustrated. This is the opposite thing I should have been doing. I should have been welcoming him to come talk to me and to come work it out. There's nothing wrong with taking a few seconds break to gather yourself, but not to decrease the attachment. You know, it's happened in schools, like in detentions and things like that. So instead of doing that, we have to increase their closeness so that they feel like they're safe and that their relationship is not at stake with you. It's really important for them to know that the relationship is not at stake. And it's really hard because, like I said, school is a separation experience. And one of the ways that we can help them at school is by modeling those really safe and healthy relationships with each other as parents and teachers, with showing them with the relationships between teachers and students, and also teachers and teachers. Like, for them to see adults having healthy relationships is really important as well. So we have to be careful because you'll see that separation from attachment causes alarm and frustration, and sometimes it's just way more than that child can handle. And that's when you'll start to see a lot of kids acting out in classrooms or even at home when they're just, they get angry, and it's because that separation can be just too hard on them. So there's something that they say that I want to explain now. When I'm talking about safety, I'm not talking about the absence of threat. We're not talking about fires here. We're talking about safety actually means that they feel safe with the presence of threat. So, for example, like a car, we know that there's a presence of threat when you go into a car, but we know that we're most likely going to be safe. So when we're talking about safety, it's about feeling safe even though the potential of threat is still there. And so we can't be afraid to discipline our kids, though, even though this is very loving and very heartfelt, we still have to say no when we think something's wrong for them. But this means that we're wearing two hats oftentimes, right? We tell them no, and then we run over here and like, I know that feels really bad, right? And you're affirming how they feel. And then, so you're wearing those two hats where you have to be both of those people. You have to be the one that's in the driver's seat saying, yeah, no, but also comforting them for the reaction of that no. And so ensuring that their relationship is safe and okay at the end and while that process is taking place is really important. So one thing that we have to avoid and we have to be really careful of is when the emotion, when emotion gets to be too much for them, they can become emotionally hardened. And so what this looks like is a kid can seem cool, toughened, seasoned. I started to see signs of it in my own son when he would just go, when he'd be crying, he'd wipe away those tears because he wanted to be strong. He wanted to talk about it because that looks weak if you are trying to be strong and push through. So they stopped talking about anything that was harmful or hurtful to them that they felt, that felt that they were hurt by, and they start to orbit around peers quite a bit more than before. You'll start to see them seeking that attachment through their peers. So this is what we really need to be careful of, is that emotional hardening. And as soon as we see that, we need to act as attachments more than ever before. We can bring them back. Now I have to stop at this point because at this point when I was doing my learning, I felt like I had ruined all relationships with everybody I'd known, adults and children. But I did realize at this point as well that and what I was taught was that being hurt through relationship also means that you can be healed through relationship. And that's an important key through all of this. And another part is that how do we model this healthy relationship when we're frustrated and we're overwhelmed and we have so much? Like I would go home and, okay, get your home reading out and, be really short-tempered. Why isn't it out yet, right? And so I'd be going through these motions and I realized that I was not feeling rested. Boy, did I not ever play. There was a lot of things that I wasn't taking care of for myself. The self-care was absent. So in order for, and my self-care might look different from your self-care. So it's really important for us to, take care of ourselves so that we can be there for them. And that's, that's sort of a foundation before we can show it to them. So what does this look like at school, though? The goal is for us to bridge that attachment so that, that they can come here and feel like it's a safe and healthy environment for them. And, find those supplementary attachments like I was talking about. We can do things like family groupings. That was one of my favorite ways to form those attachments with children. There's multiple teachers that we make sure that they can connect with each day by promoting play. Research shows that schools with fine arts program actually have the best mental health records. So that was a really big one that I found, we have the fine arts, it's here. Our expo program is an amazing way for them to connect with their environment and build relationships outside of this building. Clubs at lunch and sports teams promoting self-care and health. And there's also something that Mr. Wilding is going to talk to us about later, about something they're doing actually in their class through lesson planning and through things that they're doing together. So I'll let him tell you about that. And it could be something just as small. I had this grade 7 student when I taught grade 7 here. He would just sort of like sit at my desk and tap and hover. And I could tell that he just wanted to be collected. He wanted to be attached. He wanted a person. And so all I did was collect those eyes, and I listened, even though it was really not interesting of the things that he was, the things he was talking about. I didn't let him know that, obviously, but I really pretended that, that stage makeup and lighting and design was really interesting to me. And I was there for him, and he still tries to reach out to me till this day and get in touch with me, because he still sees that as somebody that he could be near and that was accepted and was there for him if he needed it. Not that I did anything special, I just was there and I listened. So it could be that small that provides that safety. It could be an example that small. So I actually was asked by a teacher once if we could teach empathy. And not traditionally. We can't teach empathy, but what we can do is we can foster really healthy relationships amongst people, because you can't really feel empathy for somebody you don't care about, right? So you have to know what caring feels like. You have to know, you have to know that it's a human potential. Everybody can feel it. There's nobody who cannot really feel empathy. Caring and consideration is what comes out of healthy relationships. And it becomes possible when it can temper other impulses. So what I mean by that is it can overcome other impulses to act in a different way because they care. Emotion moves us to end up caring for each other. And if we understand and recognize those emotions and we have those relationships, we begin to care naturally through them. And then how do we build those relationships, though, as adults? It's really not rocket science most of the time. It's really about, like I said, collecting them, listening to them, looking them in the eye, show interest in what they're into. There was a few kids that I felt like I just couldn't reach, no matter what I did. And then I found out one of them really liked cats. So I was like, so cats, And then that just started to build something. It's the smallest thing that you can do to start forming that, especially even if after it's already, you feel like it's already, you're so far away from that already. There was a story, and another thing is that we have to validate those feelings. I'm so bad at this because I'm like, my son would go out and tell me about Ryan did, and I'd it's like they show faith. If they've gained an attachment with somebody, they'll show faith in the other adults that their attachment has faith in. So that's why it's so important for our relationships to be so strong, is because we really need to show faith in each other so that they feel confident in us. Again, we need to believe in them and believe that they're strong enough to handle adversity. And this is also, we can help our children reach that optimal functioning. And so it's like the basis. It's those healthy relationships and emotion followed by the next. It's all geared, and it's all driven by our soft hearts, and then rest, and then comes play. Thank you, everyone.